Mass mindset. Influence the future.
Have you ever changed your opinion? Not because you thought it through, but simply because everyone around you seems to think differently. Maybe it was a restaurant you thought was just okay, until a friend raved about it, and suddenly it seemed better. Or maybe it was a movie everyone called a masterpiece that you secretly found forgettable. But you started to wonder if maybe you'd missed something. If maybe the problem was you. Or maybe, and this one stings, you once watched someone get mocked in a crowd, and you laughed along even though part of you felt uncomfortable. If any of that sounds familiar, I'm not here to judge you, because what you experienced isn't weakness. It isn't stupidity. It's one of the most powerful, most ancient forces in all of human psychology, and today, we're going to pull it apart. Picture this. It's 1969, and a researcher named Solomon Asch has invited you into a psychology study. You sit down at a table with 6 other participants. The task sounds almost embarrassingly simple. The researcher holds up a card with a single line on it. Then he holds up a second card with 3 lines of different lengths, labeled A, B, and C. Your job: match the first line to the one that's the same length. Honestly, a child could do it. The answer is obviously line C. The 6 other participants go first. One by one, they each give their answer, and one by one they all say B. You blink. You look again at the cards. The answer is still C. You can see it with your own eyes, but now it's your turn. And 6 people, 6 seemingly normal, confident people, have all said B. What do you say? This is the Asch conformity experiment, one of the most replicated and quietly disturbing studies in the history of psychology. What Asch found was staggering. About 75% of participants conformed to the obviously wrong group answer at least once, not because they were fooled, not because they couldn't see the truth, but because the social pressure of being the lone dissenting voice felt unbearable. That pressure, invisible, wordless, and almost physical in its weight, is what we're talking about today. So what exactly is happening in the brain when we abandon our own judgment for the crowds? There are 3 main mechanisms at work, and they each operate on a different level of our consciousness. The first is informational social influence. It's simple and almost rational. It goes like this: when we don't know what to do, we look at what other people are doing and assume they know something we don't. If you walk past a restaurant and it's completely empty while the place next door has a 45-minute wait, what do you think? Probably that the crowded one must be better. You're using other people's behavior as data. Most of the time this actually works. Crowds often do carry wisdom. If everyone in a building suddenly runs toward the exit, you should probably run too. The problem is when we apply this shortcut to situations where the crowd is not wiser, where the crowd is simply louder. The second mechanism is darker and more primal. It's the fear of being cast out. Humans are social animals. But most of our evolutionary history, being excluded from the group wasn't just embarrassing, it was a death sentence. No tribe meant no protection, no food, no survival. So our brains evolved a deep, visceral alarm system for social rejection. Neuroscientists have found that social exclusion activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Being ostracized doesn't just feel bad, it hurts. In the same way a broken bone hurts. So when you're sitting at that table, staring at line C, and 6 people have said B, your brain doesn't just process this as a difference of opinion. It processes it as a threat: conform or be cast out. For millions of years, the safe bet was always conform. The third mechanism is one that's been turbocharged by the modern world. It's called social proof, and it's the cognitive shortcut that says if a lot of people believe something, it must be true. This worked fine when your reference group was your village of 200 people, but now your reference group is the internet. Millions of people, and popularity has been weaponized. When you see that a tweet has 200,000 likes, your brain doesn't stop to ask whether those 200,000 people thought critically. It just registers. Many people agree, this must be right. The numbers do the persuading before the argument even begins. Let's make this concrete. Because the stakes, as history shows us, can be extraordinary. In 17th century Holland, tulip bulbs became the most coveted commodity in Europe. At the peak of the craze, a single rare bulb sold for more than 10 times the annual salary of a skilled craftsman. People sold their homes, liquidated their savings. Why? Not because tulips were intrinsically worth that much, but because everyone else was buying. And if everyone else was buying, surely there was something there. Surely you'd be left behind if you didn't act. When the market collapsed in a matter of days, the losses were catastrophic. The crowd had been wrong, and almost no one had been willing to say so while it was happening. Then there's the bystander effect. In 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was attacked outside her apartment building in New York City. Early reports claimed that 38 witnesses watched and did nothing. Later research complicated that picture, but the psychological phenomenon it inspired is very real. The more people present in a crisis, the less likely any individual is to help. Each person looks around, sees that no one else is acting, and concludes, perhaps this isn't an emergency. Perhaps someone else will handle it. The crowd's inaction becomes its own message. And then there's the internet, which has given the herd a megaphone and a scoreboard. We've all seen it. A person says something online, a wave of outrage builds, and within hours thousands of strangers are adding their condemnation, most of whom haven't read the original post or checked the context. They've simply seen a crowd running towards someone, and they've run too. Research on social media shows that the emotional intensity of a crowd, not the accuracy of its claims, is the primary driver of whether people join in. Rage travels faster than reason, always has, but the internet gave it jet fuel. So where does that leave us? I think about this a lot. The impulse to conform isn't a flaw in our design, it's a feature that helped our species survive. The problem isn't that we follow the crowd, it's that we follow it unconsciously, automatically, without stopping to ask, wait, is this right? Or does it just feel safe? There's a difference between choosing to align with a group after careful thought and being swept along by a current you never even noticed. The researchers who study conformity have found that it only takes one dissenting voice to dramatically reduce its power. Just one person in Asch's experiment who said the right answer, even a stranger, was enough to give others the courage to trust their own eyes. One voice. That's all it takes to break the spell. And I think that's one of the more quietly hopeful things about human nature. We are wired to follow, but we are also wired to respond to courage. We are built to recognize authenticity when we see it. Maybe the most radical thing you can do in an era built to manufacture consensus is to pause before you run, to look at the crowd and ask, sincerely, do I actually agree with this, or am I just afraid of what happens if I don't? The crowd will always be there. The question is whether you're in it or with it. If this made you think of a time you followed the crowd, I'd genuinely love to hear it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. These conversations matter. Thanks for watching.